I guess we'll see tonight. I'd like to call this Finance Committee meeting to order. The first item we have is assignment for request for council action. We have several for the Finance Committee. 23-142, trade-in the Police Department firearms. 23-143, OHMHAS Specialized Dockets Subsidy Project Funding for the Veterans Court. 23-144, 2023 Candlelight Walk Decorations Proposal. 23-145, Adopt Updated Disaster Recovery Plan. 23-146, fiscal year 22 CHIP Private Rehab, 1495 McKinley Avenue, Brunswick. 23-147, fiscal year 22 CHIP Private Rehab, 13 Plymouth Drive. 23-148, fiscal year 22 CHIP Private Rehab, 335 South Prospect Street. 23-149, fiscal year 22 CHIP Private Rehab, 342 Foundry Street. 23-150, discussion on development of city property at 410 East Smith Road. 23-151, settlement agreement and release access information from Management Corp. 23-152, budget amendments. 23-153, parking agreement with Medina Supply and Improvements. 23-154, waiving certain unpaid utility accounts. 23-155, expenditure for thermal imaging cameras for the fire department. 23-156, amend chapter 917 water service. 23-157, purchase a truck-mounted vacuum excavator for the Water and Streets Department. 23-158, purchase of a 2023 full ODOT bucket truck, Street Department. 23-159, increase expenditure PO number 2023-816 Goodyear Tire for sanitation. 23-160, purchase of electrical vehicle charging stations for City Hall parking deck. 23-161, SWOMA agreement with Ravago Real Estate. 23-162, waiving fees for sidewalk program. 23-163, Friends of the Cemetery Letter of Intent Mausoleum Repair Project. 23-164, amend code 94306 and 943.11 for the Cemetery Department. 23-165, bids for Spring Road Cemetery Calabarium Wall. And finally, 23-166, 2023 City Auction. The first item we have next item we have is 23-142, trade-in of the Police Department firearms. Chief Kenny?
Thank you, Mr. President. We're requesting permission to trade in 30 firearms to the Silencer Shack for $7,950 credit. The proprietor of that business is a FFL license holder.
Any questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 23-143, OHMHAS Specialized Dockets Subsidy Project Funding for the Veterans Treatment Court. Cindy?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a grant that the municipal court received for the next year. We received $75,000. We would just request that the city council approve that grant.
I think you needed emergency clause then too.
I did because the grant was awarded July 1st. Obviously, by the time we were awarded it and you guys were on a break, it's now pending.
Move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second, include an emergency clause.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 23-144, the MSM 2023 Candlelight Walk Decorations Proposal. And I guess we have George Sam from Main Street.
Thank you very much. Following Candlelight Walk 2022, Main Street Medina surveyed visitors on how they rated the west end of the weekend festivities, luminaries and lighting, parade and fireworks activities, and shopping hours rated higher. But the extreme cold weather and decorations around the square kind of rated lower. So Main Street Medina invested in new ornaments for the community tree. But most of our decorations are now old, faded, and falling apart. Last year, council asked us to provide you with a consideration for 2023. The Holiday Decorating Subcommittee of Main Street Medina is proposing that the city purchase some new decorations for the upcoming holiday season. The upgrade items include, do we have those on slide?
We have Vanna White here. We don't need them on the screen.
If we don't have them on the slide, the first set would be wreaths, red wreaths, garland, and bows for the gazebo. All lights will be warm white minis. Garland for the 4 arches at the square, as well as tree wraps and spritzers for the darkest canopies around the square. Garlands for the arches and cascading lights for the fountain at Bicentennial Common, and larger red wreaths at each lamppost in Uptown and Southtown. There they are on the screen. So that is the wreaths and the bows and garland around the gazebo. Then the next one is the archways and the canopy, the tree bases wrapped, and the spritzers that hang in the trees. And that's a sample of the spritzer that Leslie's holding up. The third one is the archway garland plus some lighting around the fountain. It's like kind of cascading lighting. And then the last one is the larger red wreaths around the lampposts that will go into Uptown and Southtown. The total cost of the purchasing of the decorations is estimated at $45,000 with professional installation of the 33 tree wraps and spritzers at an annual fee of $15,000. Last year, Main Street Medina recruits over 50 volunteers and students that work over 400 work hours to install the decorations the weekend before. This year, the installation of the warm white tree lights could start in late October if they're installed professionally and stay up and be lit throughout the winter to include 2024 Ice Festival. With the help of city staff, we plan to do the same this year, the weekend before the event. Jansen's been involved in the planning process and will help us with coordinating logistics and storage of these items. There will be an installer coming out tomorrow, actually, to decorate one of the trees with the wraps in the tree base, so you can see what they look like. We'll light it up at night this week, so you can all see what it looks like. It'll be across from Huntington Bank. Another option to the spritzers, if you don't like those, would be to wrap the tree canopies all the way up to the larger branches. And the cost of that and installation is a little more difficult and more expensive. So that is another option. Are there any questions?
Could you show the, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Could you please show the, you call them spritzers?
Yes.
Can you show what they look like on display again, Jared?
Sure.
Can you back that up?
It will be the one before that. The one before that? Okay. I can hardly hear you in there. There we go. Yeah, so they would be hanging in the tree
So
canopies.
just the bases are wrapped in lights and then those are hanging. Cool, I like that. Thank you.
All right, any questions or comments?
I have a couple. I know we met and we discussed all this in a meeting, and then we talked about the funding of it. The funding of it, some of the payment will come from the bequest that was given to the city from the gentleman who passed away in California who went to Medina High School and gave $75,000 for the lighting. And we're very grateful for that. Nino and I spoke a little bit more. We have a little bit left over, but another $6,000 is going to be taken out of that because we have to order a new wreath in front of the courthouse. And that wreath is quite expensive. We had a conversation with the gentleman on the phone about the wreath. They talked about an 8-foot wreath that they had, but then it would look like a smaller little donut between two big pillars and it probably would look as good. So I'm not sure how much we have left. Is it like around 40,000 then? Nino, do you remember?
So there was 45,000, this should be like 39, you're close,
39,000.
39,000, 38 maybe.
So we have 39,000 to contribute towards the acquisition of all these, new additions. And I know we talked about raising funds for the additional portion of it. Do you have any update on that?
That is correct. No, we are looking for the fountain to be funded. That's about 7,000 of it, so we'll let you know when that happens. Whatever you can't come up with, we will search and try to find it somewhere.
So I guess the question that I guess we need to have, you're gonna put these up so we can look at the spritzers, so to call, just to make sure, we talked about what look we wanna have for Medina.
That's
So we
correct.
just wanna make sure we're not getting crazy.
That's correct.
I think the additions of the lights, the wrapping of the trunks of the trees, other communities have done that and it looks great. I think people have been around to see that around different areas. And we've also talked about the street trees, maybe making a modification to that. And I don't know, do you have any update about the modifications on the street trees?
I don't. I feel that maybe that's something we can consider next year. It was quite a bit more for additional cost of the lighting and the installation. So we just thought if we can accomplish this year, then maybe next year we can consider that.
And what we talked about on the street trees, just so everybody understands, is more of an uplighting, putting floodlights higher up on the trees as possible to uplight the branches of the trees rather than trying to hang, wrapping them with lights because it looks kind of crazy a little bit.
I can get a cost estimate when the gentleman comes tomorrow to install.
Sure, because it just depends on the size of the street tree and, there's a lot of things that go into that. But the power, of course, will come from the the lighting from the buildings. And I think this year we have 2 more sides that we're trying to accomplish to replace the lighting, because the lighting on the buildings have been there since 2012, so it's over 10 years old, and they're starting to dry rot, so to speak, and so they have to be replaced, the wiring, so that's in process. But I don't know if anybody else on council has specific questions. I know, what day do you think this will be available to look at the square to see?
He's coming out tomorrow, so tomorrow night by
Okay.
dark, there should be something
Okay,
up.
okay. Paul?
I just have one quick question. It is the plan to remove the lights and store them away over winter, or over summer, I should say.
Yeah, I think we're working on storage with Jansen to see if there's available space. There is a trailer, we could clean out some of the stuff that's in there, because it could be thrown away, but that is one option, then another would be some additional space.
Okay, thank you.
Just real quick, I want to comment while we're on the subject. Angela, George, Leslie, everybody on the committee, I knew that you guys were going to come up with something awesome, and I love it. It's completely non-denominational, it's spirited, it says holidays, it says welcome to Medina. Great job, I love it.
Thank you. The decorations, by the way, were designed by Artistic Holiday Decorations. They're the ones that do the Cleveland Zoo,
Nice.
so it's a local company.
Medina's moving up in the world.
So I guess the question is, Bill, you have a question?
I do. And mine might not be quite so quick, I'm not sure. And I'm not exactly sure that I agree with the your non-denominational comment. I am pretty sure, though, that nobody was here when we started the Christmas program. Nobody's here, anybody was here in 1982 and saw the very first one?
I was 1 year old, watching from my crib.
Did you see it? A couple of years ago, I attended the lighting ceremony and decided not to do it anymore, so I didn't do it last year. I got to thinking about when I was elected mayor a long time ago, I thought it was a good idea to zero out the budgets, because sometimes you get into something and you just keep building on it as years and decades go by. And so it seemed to make sense to me to kind of go back to the basic part and start over to make sure we were doing and funding what we really wanted to fund at this period of time in our history. So I got to thinking about, when I saw the proposal, I heard about it from CDC members. I started thinking about the reasoning for not going back to the lighting ceremony. And it was, when you look at something down the road, it's good to reflect back and remember why you did it. And I remember why we did it, and it had a number of components. One of them was simply the absolute wonder and magic of Christmas, the things you see as a kid that you never forget. You know, you might remember it down the line all the way to the end, and then you see that same kind of wonder, you know, in the eye-popping expression of your children or your grandchildren. And it was really absolutely simply about community. There was no politicians standing in the gazebo. Nobody got hired to decorate the tree. It was done by kids. The gazebo was full of kids. Some of the kids were brownies, some were Girl Scouts, school children singing. The crowd wasn't huge. We weren't really the complete destination city that we are today, which we're pretty much a destination city every day by the look of the traffic.
Mm-hmm.
So it was three things, really. It was the magic of Christmas. It was the economy. Stores were different, 1982, 1983, 1984. We didn't have as many customers. Most stores closed at 5. It was a huge job to get people to stay open past 5 o'clock. So it was about the economy, and it was about children, but it was really about community. It was about community and us getting together, kind of the word like commune, break bread, community, like-minded people. And as I've stood in the gazebo, and I really enjoyed it, looking at a vast ocean of folks, but I wondered how engaged we were with the general community. And so when I saw the decorations, I thought, what about the kids that are selling water on the corner street on Huntington? Would I see them there? Are we really engaging community, Or have we focused so much on numbers and economy that we have to continually expand and do more? Almost like a mall, I guess. Every time we have to do more. And the last thing that mattered the most to me, I think, other than the fact that we are kind of negating the idea that this is really a Christmas celebration, and the law director's opinion that I got in 1982 was, it is okay to do that because it is a community that is overly, almost completely Christian. So it was okay to do. But the thing that disturbed me the most was the original decorations that began before we started this in 1982 were always aligned with the sense of the restoration and the history of the buildings around it. And that's why those original decorations were always live greens, asking people in business to put up greens, white candles, and some wreaths. And the rest of it really came down to Christmas, wonder, magic, kids, Christmas, and celebration, and a boost for the economy. So when I think about the tens of thousands of dollars, I remember when the planning director, Rick Grice, and I strung the first lights on the west side of the south side of town. And other volunteers and administrators strung lights on the other corners of the square. Probably didn't spend $100. When we got a tree donated, and then we had a Girl Scout troop decorate the tree. And what a cool thing, if you're a kid and you had an opportunity to decorate the community Christmas tree. I like that word a lot, but I have wondered a lot about how we use the word because we use it so loosely. Everything is like, you're a community, we're a community. But if you look at the word, sometimes we're not, because we are not all together. And I think that that matters. And so when you come with more, I think it's important to go back to the soul of the idea of why we did it in the beginning. It was simple, it wasn't as extravagant, it wasn't as spectacular that people can't wait to get here, but it was people in the community. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Lastly, if I was going to spend any money, in my own surveying, and what I hear from people in town all the time, is I would do the trees by the businesses, but I would hire someone to do them right. Because people do decorate trees and string lights in those trees in their front yards, and they look great. But the lights that we string always look like 1 or 2 strings of lights thrown on. I'd be all in for that. But that's about it.
Mr. President.
Thank you. Ms. Hazeltine?
I just wanted to comment further. I will keep it brief. I guess I'm just a little bit confused about the sense of community because that's what I've always loved about the Candlelight Walk. The time frame puts it right in line with almost every celebration of most of the well-known religions, so that if it's non-denominational, it can be celebrated throughout that entire time that we leave it up. As far as community goes, I've taken my kids, now they're 17 and 14, they don't want to go with me anymore, but I still go. The Key Club, the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, we go and we do all that. We decorate the tree. The kids get to decorate the tree. My kids have decorated the tree. We go up there that weekend and we put all the stuff up. Last year we were so proud. We called it Hazeltine Forest because we put all those little trees on this, on the square. So I guess I'm confused. Why don't you think the community is involved? Even at the tree lighting, I think it's important to show up and say, hey, we're public officials and we're here. But I don't remember anybody kicking anybody off that wanted to stand up on the gazebo like a child or something. And I love having all the people that I love in Medina and outside of Medina all gathered in one place. It takes me an hour to get from the gazebo to wherever I decide to land next because I'm talking with the community. That weekend before, visiting with all the people I don't get to see, all the Main Street volunteers, all the different clubs from the high school. If you want the kids that are selling water over on Huntington, I just saw Aunt Val today at Walmart. I'll shoot her a text and say, hey, bring the kids up this weekend, we're decorating. I don't understand why you think there's no sense of community. The Christmas has gotten less and less, which everyone knows how I feel about that. And this that's been presented to me is completely neutral, beautiful, draws people in, brings people, I mean, at this point, people are coming. It is an economic draw, just that event. And that's the kickoff. I mean, I took my kids, even though we aren't Christian, even though it's been somewhat Christian-centered, to the tree lighting because there is that wonder and there is that magic of seeing, you know, the mayor say, here we go, you know, you plus the lights in and they all come up. It's like a Hallmark movie. I mean, somebody should film it for a lifetime. I don't understand what's wrong with any of those things. I don't understand where your comments are coming from is all I wanted to say.
Thank you. I
We
guess.
have to go back and forth, I just.
Well, the question I have is that, you know, you're gonna put these up so we can look at them. You know, I'm not sure, I mean, the entire council has to make a determination of what part, you know, we like or don't like, and what we want to approve and how much we want to spend. So I guess we'll look at that this week, and in the next finance meeting, we can vote on something to give you direction, and it seems like we do have some money available, and if everybody agrees on donating that money, which was set aside specifically for this purpose, by this bequest, and maybe you have some better idea from other nonprofits or other organizations that would like to donate to other items based upon this, you know, this redo, so to speak, of the lighting and additions to the trees. That would be great. I think everybody would want to see that before they vote on this, I would imagine. Everybody
See
would
what
wanna-
it looks like, you mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, I would. I mean, I don't know.
Special council meeting tomorrow night on the square.
But we appreciate it. I think it's, you know, I personally think that, you know, attracting and making Medina a destination. I think a lot of traditions that have been started with the candlelight walk and the lighting on the square, and a lot of memories have been, as Bill mentioned, generated by that. And I think people, even when I go to work in Akron, a lot of people talk about, they come to Medina just for the lighting. Because they like to be around, they like to see it. A lot of people, you know, just want to be around it because they like the atmosphere that it generates. So, you know, I think that, you know, the additions that are going to be made here, you know, depending on what they look like, we don't want to get too crazy. That's my personal opinion, but other people may have different opinions. But we want to make it look great. We want to make it attractive because people want to come and see things new and take pictures in front of the courthouse with the big wreath because that's what they have done the last 10 years, and they just want to have a progression in their book. So we appreciate it and appreciate all your work on it, and I guess we'll try to be there tomorrow evening to see, you know, the lit up trunk with a couple spritzers on it, maybe to see how they look in the square and go from there.
My only concern is that the time between when you order it and when it comes in and then installation, we might not be able to make it in time. That's my only concern.
Well, I guess the question, I get that, but I guess if we go through finance and you can get an idea on finance what's gonna happen, and you could probably order it then. I'm not telling you what to do or not to do, but the money's available specifically for a project. I think we just have to know what it's gonna look like, and you're showing it tomorrow. So I don't know if we can approve to say, yes, we want you to do this, because we don't know that yet.
Well, it still has to go through council, though.
That's right.
So
But I mean,
if
if we go through finance and a majority of people in finance approve it,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's, unless everybody changes their mind in 2 weeks.
No.
I mean, that's the difference, I guess. I don't know. Kimberly?
Mr. President, I just had a question. I was thinking about, they were talking about the storage of the items, and sometimes these companies will offer to take everything down and store it for us for maybe like a small fee or something, and I just was curious if that was part of the conversation.
Yeah, that was part of the conversation. Of course, you know, storage is another cost, and the removal of and installation of is more costly. Just to remind you, the items that you saw, the only things that require installation is the tree wraps and the spritzers. The rest of it's installed by the community like it's always been. So all of the, you know, the whole tree decorating is done by the community the week before Candlelight Walk, and then all the arches and everything else is installed by the community. So really, if you wanted to kind of keep the trees separately and just approve the garland, the wreaths, the bows, is that a possibility? The things that you know you liked?
I mean,
What's the question about that we're we want to see? What part do we want to see? Just the
Well,
tree wraps
the
and
wrapping of the trees and the
stems,
spritzers, I think are,
spritzers?
that's the big expense. I mean, because there's, you know, how many trees there are in the park
Mm-hmm.
and what number of them and how many spritzers would you buy? Because you always, you have to have power to each one, and so that's gonna be a little
Yes.
bit more complicated.
So traditionally, we just string the lights on there, or sometimes we hang things, correct?
Not on any of the trees, I think
Not
Jansen,
inside,
Jansen
just
one
the
year,
outside?
he decorated one of the trees, if you recall, I think it was green, and did it himself,
Mm-hmm.
and that's to see what it looked like. Now, these I assume would be white, that's what they're.
One white,
depicted.
yes.
They're white lights rather than multicolored lights. Now, that's another thing, I mean, it's all particular choice, I guess, individual choice to determine that, but I understand what you're saying, but I don't know, you know, I know the money will be there for we're ordering the wreath, we already approved that at Board of Control today, so that takes 6 weeks to get that. And I understand George's concern that we want to make sure that we have, you know, you're gonna get this stuff in time, but I mean, how does the rest of the council feel? I mean, I'm just debating on the wrapping of the trees and the spritzers, all the other stuff, I think it'll look great. The only question I have, the current wreaths that we have around the light poles around the square, what's gonna happen to them?
They're really getting so old that they're rusted and really difficult to deal with. Their branches are falling off, things like that. So we could recycle them if possible, but.
Well, I just
most
didn't know,
of them-
because I know we have Route 42, we have lights under the poles down there, I don't know if it would be conducive to
To
put a couple of
reusing
wreaths
them.
on down there. I have no idea if it would even be feasible, but that's my question.
So you mean the new wreaths?
No, the old ones.
Reuse the
Well,
old
I mean,
ones?
I don't know yet, because we're gonna have old wreaths, and I don't know, they're only a few years old, so I don't know.
Yeah, they're pretty tiny, and we've struggled getting those to work, and
Oh, okay.
it's been difficult, yeah.
Okay.
The cost of the tree wraps and the spritzers, by the way, is $17,500. So if we eliminated that, everything else would be I think I gave you a total cost of, let me check my figures here. Yeah, 45,000, so it'd be 17,500 less than that.
Jansen, you had a comment?
My comment was along the lines of what George was suggesting. The decorations for the gazebo and the wreath that he's trying to get here do have a pretty long lead time. So believe you were suggesting, could you get authorization on those right now so we could secure those and ensure that those are here in time? If the tree wraps and the spritzers are really the only thing that we have to look at.
Okay.
I would agree with them that the decorations we have are in pretty bad shape. We pull them out every year, and
Okay.
it takes quite a lot of work to fluff them all up and get them looking decent.
Mr. Bacoli?
So real brief, with respect to the street trees and the wrapping, what happens is it's not because they're not really pruned, they stick out past the curb, so the trucks that come and make deliveries on the square, the mirrors will take them and rip them off. Our own plow trucks, we get close to the curb because we plow to the curb. Street sweeper, our mirrors, they don't fold in, they'll catch a wire, and next thing you know, the street lights are getting pulled down, the Christmas lights, and unstringing everything, and that's why maybe the uplighting would be the way of the future and not have what we're dealing with, constant basis repairing.
Understood.
I'll get a price
You
for that.
mentioned that several times to me. Bill?
So what you're saying is that it's not the number of lights on the trees?
It's
You-
both. We have so many strings of lights that we work with, so we have limited street tree lights, those strawberries, they come in 13-foot sections, so we wrap them. Some trees are way bigger than the others. So the trees that stick way out into the lane, higher, we don't wrap as much, or the guys don't wrap as much, they're doing it with a bucket truck. And you have to start from the trunk and come up, and the mirrors it happens regularly. They're catching a wire, and it'll pull them down and pull them tight, and here we are.
So you don't think that those trees with more lights, more carefully placed, maybe not hanging out over the street, would work? I mean, we brought up here, even though I don't like, it was brought up here already tonight, how other communities do stuff, and we've never really hung our hat on the idea of, hey, another community's doing it, so we should do it. It was usually the other way around, but I have seen trees in other communities that seem to have lots of lights on them and be strung up. And we do a lot of things here that do occasionally get damaged, and somebody, I guess, when they get damaged, they run back and they go back and try to put them back together. That's my sense of this. And if I was going to spend money, that's where I hear people talk about, what I hear people talk about all the time, that they could be done better. They don't like the way they look.
Any other comments? So is everybody okay at least approving the new wreaths, I guess, and the garland that goes around the four corners of the arches, and at least get that ordered? Is that acceptable to most people?
Fine with me.
I'd be willing to make that motion.
Everything in the proposal
Do
except
it
for
all.
the,
Except for the wrapping of the trees in the park and the spritzers.
Well, after we watched them do it one year, I know this sounds terrible, do we have to have them professionally installed every year after that?
No.
I mean, we could,
There-
can we
there's ways
watch
of-
and see how they do it?
I
and
mean,
do it?
the question is, you don't want vandalism to occur, and
Yes,
unfortunately.
no, I know
we're in
that
a-
part. I'm just thinking
But I
of
think,
the-
I think we'll know better tomorrow once we see the others, and then we can approve the others, because I think it's just the ordering of lights, which will probably be quicker than the ordering of the wreaths and the garland. So there's a motion to approve the decorations excluding the
Tree wrap and the
tree wraps
spritzers.
and the spritzers in the square.
second.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, and we'll be back next next finance meeting to talk about the wraps of the lights once we see them.
Okay, we'll see you tomorrow night at dark,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna
Thank you.
say, what time? What time is dark
probably
officially?
10:30.
Gets it- no.
Oh, gosh,
Yeah.
well, sorry, guys, about my bathrobe, but I'll be there.
It's a party. Thank you.
Thank you. 23-145, adopt updated disaster recovery plan. Sergeant Jaramba?
Thank you, Mr. President. Over the last few years, we've made several network changes to the city's infrastructure, from hardware to software to networks to our phone system. And along the way, I've been looking for the right time to update our disaster recovery policy with the changing technology. We finally got through the majority of these projects, and first, let me just say that I want to thank, several people in this new ramped-up disaster recovery policy, from Mayor Hanwell, Law Director Huber, Justin Fields works with me, and Paul Rose. Mr. Rose had some input into what we needed to make sure we were checking, not only from the technical side, but also from how workflow works with the disaster recoveries. So we've got all those pieces in place, and this is an updated one. Both auditors usually want to see these, and insurance companies, so this would be our latest and greatest.
Thank you. I reviewed it. The only question I had is, do you have to put specific names in there? Because if we adopt the plan with the names in there, that the name changes, we got to change the plan again. I don't know if you could put the title of the office, and then you could do internally, you could put the names in there, but what we adopt as council, just the title of the office or something, is that better, or how does it
Yeah,
work?
no, normally you put in the names and the current phone numbers and email addresses, and that's why there's a section in there that talks about who updates the policy, which is, in this case, Justin Fields and I.
Oh, he's- okay.
We just stay on top of that, so from our network positions to council, to mayors, to
You update.
Nino and service
Okay.
directors and everybody, we just have to stay on top of it.
All right.
Not only
That's
from a
what-
technical standpoint, but the flow side.
Sure, I just wanted to make sure that that was done, because I didn't want an old name in there and somebody saying something. But
Right.
Mayor?
So I guess what I would suggest is, if council, when you pass it, if and when you pass it, would grant the authority for the administration to change the names and phone numbers. If the plan itself significantly changes or substantially changes, we'd be happy to bring that back. But take this name and this phone number and change it to the new person in that position, I think we can handle administratively if council will permit it.
Sure, that makes sense to me. How about everybody else? Does that make sense to
I
everybody?
was just going to suggest that because things can change quickly.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'll make the motion to approve this revised ones with the ability for the administration to update as necessary the names and the positions.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 23-146, fiscal year 2022 CHIP private rehab, 1495 McKinley Avenue, Brunswick. Andrew?
Thank you. Yeah, this is our first CHIP project of program year 2022. This is a purchase order to Green Home Solutions for a private rehab at 1495 McKinley in Brunswick. If you recall, we partner with the city of Brunswick on our CHIP project, so half the funds go to Brunswick, half the funds go to Medina. This is a large project at about $65,545, includes a new roof, gutters, downspouts, front porch reconstruction, and electrical work throughout the home. The funding here is a little bit different. $22,414 is from basically the CHIP funds, and then $43,131 is from Brunswick's program income funds, so that's income that they've accumulated over the years through the CHIP. So we'll pay that to the contractor, and then they'll reimburse us. Thank you.
And this is 2022?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
just wanted to double check. Threw me off a little bit.
Move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 23-147, fiscal year 22, CHIP, private rehab, 13 Plymouth Drive. Andrew?
Thank you. Again, this is a purchase order to Green Home Solutions. I'm sorry, the previous one, we did request emergency clause. I neglected to mention that.
I did add it.
Okay,
Yep,
sorry.
yep.
This is again a Green Home Solutions for 13 Plymouth Street in Medina. This project is for $55,470. It's a similar composition, a new roof, gutters, downspouts, spouts, electrical work for $55,470, and we are asking for the emergency clause in order for the contractor to get going on the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
No, I was going to say, Andrew, thank you, because you did say Plymouth Street. I know in here it says Plymouth Drive, but that's a Ward Ford Street. It has always been Plymouth Street here in the city of Medina, so. Move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 23-148, fiscal year 22, CHIP, private rehab, 335 South Prospect Street. Andrew?
So this is another purchase order again to Green Home Solutions. This will come from a couple of different pots out of the CHIP funds, from the OHTF and the CDBG funds. This is a smaller project, includes a reconstruction of a rear deck ramp, front porch, and bathroom renovations. The amount is $21,900, so we're not asking for emergency. Thank you.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 23-149, fiscal year 22, CHIP, private rehab, 342 Foundry Street. Andrew?
Thank you. Again, this is another purchase order to Green Home Solutions for 342 Foundry Street, an amount of $39,675. The exterior work is roof, gutters, and downspouts, windows, porch repairs, and interior work is bathroom renovation and electrical work, among other items. Total cost is $39,675, and again, we're asking for an emergency clause in order for the contractor to get started. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Now we have 23-150, a discussion item for the development of the city property at 410 East Smith Road. Andrew?
Thank you. This is a request regarding the city-owned land at 410 East Smith. This is the former Bennett Lumber site by the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity, Tom O'Connell. This is to get council's feedback on utilizing the property for a residential purpose. If you recall, in 2001, we discussed a similar project. This is with Habitat and Medina Metropolitan Housing for a combined residential development. This was much more dense. Some multifamily was in there. And at the time, we were going through our comprehensive plan process, so we decided to pretty much put it on the table until that was completed. So the results of the comprehensive plan, which was completed in fall of '22, that area was a focus area of the plan. There were 3 or 4, and it showed redevelopment of the site. One was townhouse residential, and one was part of a larger kind of apartment complex. So the comprehensive plan envisioned this as a residential use, that was currently zoned industrial. So Habitat has provided some conceptual plans that show 10 duplex units on the site. It's far less dense than the original proposal, and it leaves kind of the northeast part of the site undeveloped. So this would kind of be a 2-part process where council will be willing to make the land available for this purpose, and then the second part would, down the road, it would need to be rezoned to a residential zoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion? Anybody?
I think this looks amazing. I want to live there.
Well, I guess the questions that I have related to it, you know, that you talked about the cost, would it be a outright donation to Habitat by the city of the entire property, or certain portions of the property that the structures will be constructed on? And second, I assume when we purchased it, I know we did a phase one and we did that. Are we all good with the environmental condition of the property before we start putting residential houses on the property?
I'm not aware of any environmental concerns. There is no floodplain there. I can tell you that stream doesn't actually have a documented floodplain. As far as the configuration, I guess it could be either way. It could be the whole property. There is a good portion of it that is unused that could remain, forested. So it'd kind of be up to the council. on what
Yeah, I
they would
wasn't
be
really sure how that
comfortable with.
would go with kind of keeping open space and our use and try to provide a avenue for more affordable housing and develop an area that's, been vacant for many, many years. And I know the railroad tracks are right there, which is gonna be somewhat of an inhibitor on that, but I mean, it is what it is, I guess, Mayor?
I didn't know if Bill wanted to go.
Go ahead.
So I just want to review with council, a number of years ago, the Medina County Housing Network did a coordinated community plan to prevent and end homelessness, and it was a three-part strategy, one of which is a homeless shelter. Skip is here from MMHA, and we just had our boards and commissions approve the renovation, the change of zoning and the proposed renovation of their current office structure, and then they will find a new space. The second is permanent supportive housing, which they combine 2 lots on Lafayette Road adjacent to the Juvenile Detention Center facing Lafayette, and they're building units there, and both of those will have a person there 24/7, both of those. And the third part of this study was affordable housing, which I was at Habitat's dedication for the 50th home yesterday in Medina County. And a problem, not only in the city of Medina, but in the county of Medina, is the lack of affordable housing. And something like this, which gets to home ownership, some of the rents that these folks are paying, no disrespect to any of the landlords, some of these rents.
He's reasonable.
Some of these rents, they could easily pay a mortgage and have home ownership through plans like this. When Andrew and I met with Tom O'Connell from Habitat, and he'd be happy to answer any of your questions, we were not talking about a donation of the land. We were talking about the city at least recouping what the city paid for it, which was only a portion of the value of it, because a part of it was a donation for a tax benefit from the 2 property owners that gave it to the city. And we felt that that was reasonable, that was fair. With the residential around this, it makes great sense to me as well, and it's badly needed.
Bill?
Agreed.
We had a long and broad discussions about this piece of property in particular during the comprehensive plan, and about the use and about affordable housing. And there were pros were brought up. Other plans were brought up for more high-end housing. Thanks, Mayor, great explanation, but no question we need affordable housing. And my view has always been that close into the community, it's a prime piece of property that we've had for quite some time, and I don't know that you could think of a better use because of the need. I think everybody here recognizes the need here for affordable housing, and how the fact of paying rent, for individuals year after year after year and never building up any equity whatsoever, is just a losing game as far as ever getting ahead. So I don't know that we could do anything. I don't think there's anything better we could do than to approve this kind of development in this area close into town.
My only comment or question would be, looking at the structures, is this more like a cluster development, condo development, fee simple ownership? I'm just trying to figure out, we all agree of the use now, but 10 years from now, if it's sold or it changes to something different, I guess I'm just trying to look ahead, that what you developed here sounds great, but I didn't know what type of ownership it would be. Would it be pure fee simple, like a party wall in these buildings, or what's envisioned.
Yeah, so thank you.
Hi, Tom.
There we go. So Tom O'Connell, Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity. Thank you, Mayor Hanwell, Andrew, and members of council for this opportunity. So what we've preliminarily talked about is these would be very similar to like a condo development. Probably develop an HOA association. We've talked with other habitats. Habitat's board started talking about multifamily development probably a couple of years ago. Land, I'm sure it doesn't surprise all of you, but land is becoming harder for us to find. That's affordable for us to find. We just purchased a piece of property here in Medina on Elmwood Street. We paid $50,000 for a .25 piece of acre of land. And it's more than we wanted to pay, but we don't have much land here in Medina to build on. So we spent the money. So in talking with other habitats, they said when land is becoming harder to find, if you can find a larger piece of property, 2 acres, 5 acres, even maybe beyond that, and just you want to maximize it. You want to try to build as many homes, whatever homes might look like, duplexes, triplexes, townhouses on it. We're on a Zoom call with a habitat in the Charlotte region, and the majority, well, 40% of their builds now, again, much bigger than us here in Medina County, but are multifamily developments because land is becoming harder to find, and we would want to maximize. So the goal would be to, long-term, these would be homeowner occupied.
Yeah, I guess my question is keeping them affordable, because knowing what it costs to build, let's say, a simple unit, you're talking 200,000, 225,000. So what does that mean? Is that affordable? I mean, I think that's kind of.
So a little bit about the Habitat program. Our mortgages, we originate the mortgage in-house. The mortgage is based on what they can afford. It's not based on what it costs us to build the home. I can tell you, the last 4 years that I've been in this role as executive director, the cost to build and buy land has gone up. When I started 4 years ago, it was around $160,000. Anywhere in the county, buy a piece of property, build a 3-bedroom, typically 1-bath, 1,300 square foot home here in Medina. Now we're pushing 200, if not $210,000, $20,000. That's not what they pay, though. They pay a mortgage of what they can afford. It's 30 years, it's 0 interest over the 30-year term of the loan. So it's always affordable. The challenge, though, and one more point, is the taxes. That's becoming an issue that we're dealing with.
And what about the ability to sell? Because if I would buy it for that and I had somebody offer me $250,000 for it, why wouldn't I just sell it and pay your mortgage off and take the rest of the money? Is that permissible, or is there a
Absolutely,
deed
yeah.
restriction, or no?
No, yeah, so it is absolutely, we cannot legally restrict them, stop them from selling. But what they have to do is if 2 months in, they turn around and want to flip that house, they have to pay off, so getting a little bit into the weeds on the mortgages. Our homes, at least last 4, if not beyond, before I got there, say 7 years, have 2 mortgages. First mortgage is their affordable mortgage, what they pay on every month. The second mortgage is the difference between their affordable mortgage and appraisal value. So it's a silent second, it's amortized over 10 years. In the deed, it talks about if you sell your home within the first 10 years, a couple things. Habitat has the right of first refusal, so we could buy the home back from them, giving them the equity that they've earned or accrued in that home, and then we could recycle it for another family in our program. If we choose to not use or exercise our right to purchase it back, they would sell it, but they have to pay off their first mortgage and whatever's left on that second mortgage.
Understood. I just want to make sure it stays
Yeah,
affordable, because
absolutely, yeah.
if the way prices are going, it would make sense for you to buy, sell it soon. And
Absolutely.
I know some of the federal programs have restrictions or penalties for selling it earlier.
Sure.
So I didn't know if you
Yeah,
guys
no.
would put something like, if you sell, you can't sell it in the first 5 years or something.
don't,
Okay.
no,
Mayor?
Tom, if you could share with the council, I know you brought it up yesterday at the home dedication, but the number of folks
Yeah,
looking for
yeah.
housing in our county here?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And again, thank you for attending yesterday. I know it wasn't in here, Medina, so I appreciate you making the trip to Brunswick. So, as the mayor said, we dedicated our 50th home, and I was really, I had two, I felt like there were competing thoughts, but I think they're appropriate given the significance of dedicating our 50th home. We celebrate all that took place, 50 homes in 32 years, really all across Medina County here. But at the same time, there's a lot of work to do. We have 7 families still in our program doing their volunteer hours, sweat equity, before their home is built. House number 51 is under construction, just down the road here on West Friendship. You'll all be invited the end of the year to see that dedication. In the last 3 years, we have received nearly 100 homeowner applications, 41 alone this year. So we have a team of volunteers that is processing those applications as we speak. There are so many people, as we review applications in our county, that are paying well over half of what they bring in every month for rent. Many people, and this is feedback we get from our applicants and families, they're living under constant fear and undue stress of their rent going up without really much notice. Many are living and continue to live in unsafe and unhealthy living conditions or relationships, stay in relationships, because really they have no other option. And that's what we're dealing with here in Medina County and specifically even in Medina.
So as far as the concept is, well, how does the council feel about the concept? Everybody?
I guess I would like to add, too, I want to thank you, Tom. I know you and I think the last time I saw you, we were talking about Elmwood, so I'm really glad that worked out, because one thing I would say about Habitat is every time they come into a neighborhood or find that piece of property, it always turns out to better that property and better the neighborhood.
Thank you.
So I'm very thankful for that. I know the 2 that in Circle Drive in Ward 4, one was a new build, one was a rehab, both of those improvements. So I look at this Bennett property all the time, and I always think about, boy, it'd be great to have something positive come out of that, and I think this is a good start there. My only concern is the residents so close to the railroad tracks.
Yep.
I do have some people that tell me that live close to the railroad tracks that it's one of their biggest challenges with
Yeah,
the
it
trains
is.
coming through. But other than that, I think it'd be great, and I'm
Yeah.
very much in favor and
Yeah.
thankful that Habitat is involved in this
Thank you.
project.
To speak to the railroad tracks, the proximity, because again, and even beyond the tracks, there's we call it a power station, probably
Yep.
beyond that, and it's not the most beautiful location, but it's interesting that you have a fairly new, came in the same time around the same time as us, the Farmers Exchange, luxury apartments, right by a railroad track, and I don't know the current occupancy, but they seem to be always full, based on what I hear, so I think we could fill them for sure.
I've got somebody who lives across the street in the other apartment building, one of our new teachers that lives there, and she said that's the hardest thing is to get used to that train.
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
Paul?
What criteria would you be using for selecting the participants in this program?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So in general, to qualify for the Habitat program, homeownership program, really comes down to 3 criteria. First, they have to present need for better housing. So need could be they're paying over half of what they bring in every month for rent. Need could also be they're using a Section 8 housing voucher. Need could be there's not enough bedrooms for the family size. Need could also be environmental or safety issues in the place they are living. To assess need, if they meet all our financial requirements, we do a home visit. We're not inspecting, we're not home inspectors by any stretch of the imagination. We have a couple pages of questions that we kind of just go through. Second is they have to be willing to partner with us, and what we mean by that is volunteer hours. So if it's a single applicant, which most of our applicants are, the 50th dedication that the mayor was at yesterday, a single mom, 4 kids. She has a full-time job, she has 3 of her 4 kids are still in school. She completed over 250 volunteer hours.
Wow.
It's required. They don't get an excuse. We don't have childcare. She showed up when she was tired, and she did all her, and beyond, 250 volunteer hours. So they have to be willing to be involved in our program from day one, helping other people's homes be built, volunteering at our Restore on Lafayette Road there. And then the third criteria is financial. They have to have the ability to pay, because our homes are not free. So they have to have income, whether that's wages, Social Security, disability. They have to have some sort of consistent, regular, ongoing income to be able to pay for the mortgage, pay the utilities, all of that. So we use the standard affordable housing, 30%, that their mortgage payment will not be more than 30% of their monthly income. We look at their debt, we run a credit report, we do all of that. So really as long as they meet those 3 criteria, they would qualify for our program.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yes, I do.
Yes, Reggie.
I appreciate the effort here. I've been in Medina a long time, and I realize there is not enough affordable home. But can you please share with those in attendance how you prepare many of these new homeowners to be homeowners? I own several, and there's a lot to it. There's a lot of unexpected expenses, maintenance, work that goes into home ownership. How do you prepare these new homeowners for this?
I appreciate the question. So as part of Sweat Equity, one of the requirements is that they go through Money 101 classes. We partner with the OSU Extension Office here in Medina. They come and teach us their material, so 4 weeks, about 45 minutes to an hour each time. They are required to go through these classes. So we're talking about budgeting, savings, credit, predatory lending, some basic financial management, because they are going to have bills to pay. They are going to have a mortgage to pay. They are going to have unexpected expenses like every single homeowner. We are giving them a brand new, not giving them, they're paying for it, but a brand new home. But even in a brand new home, there's issues that come up. So we're preparing them to manage their money that way. And then we're also, as it relates to maintaining a home, because many have never owned their own home. They've never had to replace the furnace filter. They've never had to, if a breaker trips, what do I do? They usually maybe call the maintenance department at where they live, the property maintenance department. So we have a homeowner maintenance modules, a whole binder full. So our construction manager, Ruth, she meets with them and goes through every module that goes through the major parts of the home. And we talk through, here's where the furnace filter is. Here's how often you replace it. The importance of cleaning out gutters, maintaining your lawn, the breaker box. If your toilet stops working or keeps running, do you have to call a plumber? Or maybe you can open that lid and understand what's inside there and fix the lever so now it works correctly. So we try to equip them as best we can. We also provide a 1-year warranty on all of our homes. That first year they call us really for anything that breaks, stops working. But yeah, so those are the tangible ways we try to equip them to both be able to pay and manage and save, but also take care of the house. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? So I think if we can get a better understanding of, how this would happen, the land portion of it, I guess, that the city owns, I think it seems like everybody's kind of agreeable with the concept. We just need the roadmap, so to speak, now.
Can I just add one more thing that I forgot?
Sure.
So one potential partnership that we are talking about in this development there on East Smith is we've had some preliminary conversations with Kathy's House, with John Robinson and Kathy's House, Recovery Housing here in Medina County. One of the steps that they're missing or don't have right now in the recovery housing is an independent living option. They're all communal living options, whether here in Medina, Brunswick. So what we started talking to them about is maybe selling one of these units directly to Kathy's House. They would own it, and they would manage it, and they would decide which residents are ready for that step on their recovery journey. They have some of their residents have partners or loved ones, family members, that they're not living with while they're living in one of the Kathy's House or recovery housing units. But this would give them an opportunity to reunite, get reacclimated with one another, and then be ready maybe to take that next step to rent their own apartment or even maybe buy their own house or whatever the next step might be. So just to kind of put that on the radar as well, we're talking to them as well about maybe partnering with us on this development.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for all the information. All right. Moving on to 23-151, a settlement agreement and release for the access. This is Mr. Huber, I think, isn't it?
Some time ago, the city of Medina entered into agreement with a company called Gateway to store our records, particularly with respect to law department, building department, and finance. And I think the Medina Municipal Court also stored records there. And that worked pretty well. Gateway was located on Windfall Road in Medina. When we needed records, we could go there, or alternatively, we could get somebody to provide our record boxes when needed. Gateway sold out their business without any advance notice to the city of Medina, and a company called RetrieveX, also known as Access, bought Gateway, and without any request to the city of Medina, all of our records were transferred down to Columbus. And as time's gone by, what I've found, because every now and then I need to get into the law department records, Retrievex can't find the records. And as I started pushing a little more, what I found out is our boxes were located in places where Retrievex didn't even know where they were. And so after discussion with the council, I terminated the contract by letter and asked to get our boxes back. And what I found was that we couldn't even get our boxes back from Retrievex. They didn't know where they were located. There are a couple warehouses down there. And moreover, I got passed from one person to another person to another person all through email and couldn't find anybody in charge. So I got irritated and filed suit because I figured I'd get an attorney in charge. He'll have to crack the whip and put somebody in charge so that we can get our boxes back. And it has taken almost 6 months after filing suit to get an attorney. And even then, the response was not particularly great. And at the point where we had a pretrial, much thanks to Judge Kimbler, and I brought up the point that if we can't get where we need to go, what I'm going to do is ask for damages, punitive damages and attorney's fees, which got their attention finally. And after that, we got most of our boxes back over a period of about a month. We're still short some boxes. They originally wanted us to pay the storage fees for some period of time. We reached an agreement where we're not going to pay any money. We're going to get all the boxes back that they can find. The Medina Municipal Court boxes, I guess, are stored up in Brucksville, but I'm not really sure how reliable actually getting anything from them is. As this has gone along, I've been contacted by Medina County Attorney Mike Lyon. Attorney Mike Lyon's having the same problem with access. They can't get their records either. And so what he's doing is looking at a pattern to duplicate the lawsuit we filed so that they can try to get their records back from this company. This company is nationwide, seems to be fairly disorganized, in my opinion. Seems like nobody is in charge, or if they are in charge, they move on so fast you can't really deal with anybody. In our agreement, we reached a settlement agreement. I'm asking the court, or this council, to approve the mayor signing it. We've got all the records and boxes back that they are able to locate so far. In this agreement, they're continuing to agree to look in the warehouses to get our records back. I think we're looking at storing our records over at Garfield School maybe, or at Liverpool, but at least they're local, so when we need to get them, we can. I carved out an exception in the release for the fact that the Medina Municipal Court still has their records with this company, although I'm curious as to whether they actually are able to retrieve records for the municipal court when they need them. I don't think anybody's asked to find out. I can't believe they'd be any more responsive to the municipal court than they have been to us. But as it stands, the municipal court is carved out. We've got our records back for the building department, the finance, and the law department. And we're not having to pay them any money. We're just going to close the lawsuit. And I'd ask the council to approve the settlement agreement to resolve the lawsuit.
Thanks. Any questions for Mr. Huber?
Move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 23-152 budget amendments. The first one we have is 2023-36, a check for the Miracle League. Keith?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a pass-through. We received a check, but we need an appropriation to be able to spend that check.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 23-035, Helios cameras restitution at Reagan Park.
It's restitution and a donation, so again, pass-throughs because money came in, so.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 8476, high grass expenditures.
This one, they have more expenditures than we had budgeted for.
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 2337, municipal pool.
As Jansen can tell you, the pool's been very busy, so they have more expenditures than normal, but they also have more revenue than normal, so.
That's good news.
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And 2338, donation for fireworks.
This is another pass-through. Part of the fireworks display is paid for by the two townships, so this is their share that we've received.
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 23-153, parking agreement with Medina Supply and Improvements. Andrew?
Thank you. If you'll recall, we recently completed a parking study of Uptown and Southtown, which found parking to be adequate overall. However, it did note that we should look for parking in Southtown, which currently has no public parking option. To that end, we've been in discussions with Medina Supply for a part of their property on 230 East Smith Road. So that would actually be off of Broadway, where there's a warehouse building just north of the railroad tracks, to utilize that for public parking. So this is kind of a two-part request. The first is to allow the mayor to enter an agreement with Medina Supply's parent company to allow public parking on the site. And the second is there's a number of items that need to be done to make it appropriate for parking. A number of these items can be addressed by city staff, but there are a couple of things, including installation of a fence and some kind of upgraded signage, which will cost approximately $7,226. So this would effectively allow parking on that site, would be available to all. Then the lease would be good for 2 years. The emergency clause is requested in order to allow the mayor to enter in the agreement and utilize it for parking as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Just going to say a comment. I appreciate this. I think this is great,
Yes.
much needed. And I've noticed just from the Helios project, how many more people are down there, which then the parking lot on Broadway there for our, behind the spokes is filled. This will be another great place for families that want to park and go walk the trail now to see the Helios project. So appreciate all the work on this one. Move to approve with the emergency clause?
Second, including emergency clause.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 23-154, waiving certain unpaid utility accounts. Mr. Huber?
At the last discussion concerning utility accounts, I think there was something in the area of 35,000 to 40,000 that the council was talking about waiving. Included in that amount was a substantial amount of money from landlords who have owned the same property all the way through this. And these folks signed, actually, and this did not come up in the last discussion, these landlords sign an agreement where they guarantee that they are going to take care of this back due water amount for their tenants if their tenants don't pay, and that's standard in most cities, and we have the same protocol. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me to waive the amount of money from the landlords who have owned this property all the way through as a result of this problem with not certifying the bill in the last number of years. Frankly, these folks have known all along that they guaranteed this amount. They've actually got their names on a card kept by the women in the finance department and over at the water department. So I thought maybe, the bottom line is the council can do as you choose with respect to this, but it didn't make a lot of sense to waive those amounts for those individuals. So Jenny prepared a amount that you would waive that carves out the landlords. And then Jenny prepared the amount that was originally presented to you at the last discussion on this. It's your call. I'm just going to tell you that I can't really see that it's, if a landlord guaranteed this, they really ought to pay this, in my opinion, even if this thing wasn't certified. So it's a matter for discussion for you to decide, and that's why it's here before you at the Finance Committee.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Huber, but also for clarification purposes, the individual homeowner signs that same card, as I read it, and they agree to be responsible for the bill also when they sign up. So it's not just the landlords. I think it's anybody who signs up for a water account agrees to be responsible for
Well,
those fees.
not for the people who came in and bought a property in the interim while this wasn't certified. Those folks didn't know about that, so it's a little different for them.
And I think that's where, when we made the agreement at that meeting, it was for people that did not own that property when that bill occurred. Now, if the landlords own that property, that would not include those. It would be for people, like the few people that were here during that meeting, that,
But I just want to get clarification on my point. When people, and Vanessa, maybe you can answer this, when somebody signs up for a water account, I read the card, it says you agree to be responsible for all outstanding water bills on the property. So if I'm a homeowner, I sign it, I'm responsible for it. That's my understanding of when they sign those cards, when they sign up. Am I incorrect? That's how it is? Okay, so it is, both landlords and residential owners, when they sign up, they know that they gotta pay all the no matter how long ago they occurred, they agree to it when they sign that card.
and you made that point before.
Well, I just want to clarify that, because
Yeah,
it sounded like these
and-
landlords do it, but it's not. Everybody in the city does it.
Right,
Okay.
but the difference was, or is, the landlords that Mr. Huber is talking about owned that property when that water bill occurred and still owns that property. It was their tenants that failed to pay so big difference for the people, and I agree, I claimed ignorance to it, and you said, just because I'm ignorant to the law, it doesn't mean I have to not observe it. But where I agreed, and I think the majority of us that voted for it, was for the people that has received these letters saying that they owed this money from people that previously owned that property. Now, you're right, it may have
Understood.
been their fault.
Understood.
But not, what Mr. Huber is saying is, that would not include what we were considering at the last meeting.
Yeah, that's
Thank you.
not-
Understood. Bill?
I think this was a settled issue. We had this discussion, I think, earlier, and I think we covered really what Denny's talking about, or Councilman Simpson's talking about. We settled this, I think we voted on it. And I do agree that if it's the landlords that,
Right.
I agree to eliminate that. But I have a question about the amount. When we calculate the amount, is that the amount that we charge? That when we talk about how much we have to set aside to pay this, is that the amount that calculated on what we charge for the water or what the water cost us?
These are
And
the
interest
utility
and
bills when they were finalized. So it's what we charge. And then there will have been penalties before it was closed out, because there's a 10% penalty per our code when a bill's not paid. And then the second month, we get to disconnect, and then we're at finaling out the account, but it's what we charge.
Okay, thanks. So am I correct then that when we talk about how much this is going to cost us, the city, to make this right, that it really isn't that cost, because that's not what the water cost us, that's what we charged, correct?
I think that's what Keith is
Right.
mentioning, is that the $35,000 or $36,000 number includes those other fees, which at some lower amount is the cost of water that we pay
To
to
us, right.
Rural Lorraine.
Okay.
Any other, what do people, do you want to readdress it, or is it settled? Do you want to stop? And
I'm fine with the way it was.
I'm fine with how it was.
I'm sorry, I thought we were leaning toward the difference with the landlord.
Well, yeah.
That was what we said before.
But that
Okay.
wasn't in the original, we said the people that owned the property when those bills occurred are still responsible for them, not the people that.
But we're not changing anything. The landlords are being waived right now. So
Yeah.
everybody's okay with that?
Yeah,
Yes,
they are.
Yes.
That's the 36,000. That's what Greg is saying. If we
Yes.
want to take the landlords
Yeah.
out, then we're at 23,000.
Right.
But, yeah, and I want to take the landlords out, but I thought that was our original agreement.
Nope.
Oh,
We
okay.
did
Does
everybody.
anybody else want to take the landlords out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the landlord
They still own the
should pay it.
property. Yeah,
Okay, because I think nobody should be waived, so.
yeah, I know that.
Of course.
But okay, if you want to make a motion to modify what we did and, have the landlords not be waived, you could make that motion.
I will make that motion then that we are readdressing it and going with option 2, or I propose option 2 of $23,534.05 and the landlords who signed that card and who had tenants in that building, they are responsible for that portion of it.
Second.
Any further discussion? Just to be clear, I'm going to vote yes on this because I don't think anybody should be waived, but I would rather have another motion than not waive the residents, but that's just me. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. So right now, the option 2 of 23,000 is the only ones being waived are the resident owners of the city who signed the card, even though they said they were going to pay, they don't have to pay.
You sound so happy about it.
Because it's a legal issue, and it just bothers me that it's a legal issue, and it's... So, okay, any other questions on it? Okay, so Greg, you got that?
Thank
good?
you.
Okay. So we go to 23,155, expenditure for thermal imaging cameras for the fire department. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. President. This request is for the replacement of the thermal imaging cameras that the firefighters use, not only to search for people, but also hidden fires in buildings. Our existing units are a little over 15 years old now. They were purchased, the newest one was purchased all the way back in 2008. They've become very unreliable, which is also the reason why we've requested the emergency clause for these. Thank you.
Any questions?
Move to approve with the emergency clause?
Second, including the emergency clause.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 23,156, amend chapter 917, water service. I submitted this request to talk about moving forward. We have to do something to our code to address the issues that we just talked about waiving. I gave 3 options. We did have a meeting about it. The water department, the law department, the mayor, we all discussed some of the issues. And I think, Vanita, if you want to approach the microphone and kind of give a summary of what you deal with so that council is aware of what you talked about in the meeting, and so there's a better understanding of the procedures that we should adopt.
All right, just thank you all for being here tonight and listening to this information. It's very important to our city residents as well as to our departments here who function on fees that are generated from our billing for water. Mr. President had added or suggested a couple of things here, and as we discussed it, I think we shook out all the bugs, if you will, to understand, excuse me, that water accounts, which includes sanitation, those items, when someone comes to start service, they indeed have every intention of paying that bill. There is a consideration, of course, of a former unpaid bill. We think procedure-wise, we can work out something within our departments to look at those outstanding bills and try to correct that before we get to that point of trying to collect it when it becomes certifiable. So my suggestion would be that the 3 items that Mr. President had outlined before, that we negate those and that we look at a couple of other options, one of which we discussed, which I don't think we have taken any action specifically for, but it would be to increase the water deposit or the deposit when someone comes to start service. It currently is at $100, excuse me, and now we are suggesting that it goes to $200 as we have looked at some of these accounts that have extremely, what we consider large balances. Most of them would be covered with a $200 deposit. There was some suggestion that everybody pay the $200, whether you're an owner or a renter. That has yet to be discussed and decided, but I did want to entertain that information to you. And as Mr. Durham said, generally 2 months of billing and 2 penalties or 2 late fees constitutes disconnection of service. When the service is disconnected, there's a $50 reconnection fee. There has been some discussion about increasing the cost of the reconnection fee as well on those accounts that have gone delinquent. So those are just some considerations that I think we can try to work towards. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to address them.
Yes, I just have a kind of a question. When somebody comes to sign up for an account, what do you envision to be the new protocol of letting them know, hey, you could sign up, but there's an outstanding water bill that needs to be paid, and will you say you have to pay that, or how is that going to be handled? Because I don't like having somebody sign up for a water account knowing that there's an outstanding balance, and then we say, well, you don't really have to pay that because it occurred by somebody else. But, so how is that going to be handled?
Well, generally speaking, as in our discussions, we talked about it, a conversation with a new owner coming in or signing up electronically online, which is an option, can kind of be a little tricky. We do not have a final water bill perhaps calculated yet for the former account holder. So, and generally we run 1 month service behind the billing. So most times our final bills are 2 months of service. So even if you have a final bill or a current bill that has been paid, let's say August due bill, that was for service that occurred in June. So we still have to bill July and we still have to bill August if you move out the end of August. So that would constitute when someone comes in, we would look at the account and see it has a zero balance. If it has a $200 deposit, we feel fairly certain, looking at perhaps the calculations of water billing averages, that the $200 deposit, if there were one, would cover that final bill. But as far as trying to address a future homeowner or a renter to pay an outstanding bill from the prior account would be difficult. However, in our services, on our computers, we can look it up and see at that service address if there were any outstanding balances, and perhaps we could address that at that time.
Now, when we had these waiving of these current ones, am I to assume that we kept all the deposits on those people? We never gave any of those back, and we
No,
still
those
had...
deposits were utilized, $100 deposits were utilized. We used to have a $75 deposit, and, excuse me, since probably about 12 or 14 years ago, we increased it to $100. So, and as we all know, our water bills have increased. We try to keep our costs pretty conveniently consistent with what we have to pay for water. But again, that $200, if we were to approve that, would, I think, give us some assurances that, and perhaps all tenants should be required to have that deposit, not just...
Right. Now, I know in Wadsworth, they have a $300 deposit, and all tenants pay that too. So that's the way Wadsworth runs, and, you know...
And as a side, if currently any of our account holders would currently have a $100 deposit, should they go to disconnection, we would require the additional $100 to be paid at that time to bring them up to that $200 threshold for the deposit.
So the first question is the deposit that we're talking about, is 200 enough, or like Wadsworth says 300, or is it 250? What do you feel comfortable with,
You can't tell
Bill?
people you're going to triple it.
But you arrived at the 200 by looking at the...
Just generally looking at,
right.
yes.
And you feel that that $200 would most of the time, 90% of the time, 99% would really accomplish what we're trying to accomplish, which is a way to pay off that back, cover that back bill, right?
Correct.
The one that people walked away from and the new people don't know about.
Correct.
You know, that makes sense to me. I mean, if you think 200 is enough,
I mean, at some point in time, we may have to come before you again and ask for an increase, you know, like Mr. Coyne had said.
Sure.
300 is in Wadsworth, so I mean, we may have to do that consistent with where we go. But we work our accounts differently now than we had in the past, so we're pretty aggressive at collecting our uncollectible delinquent accounts.
so really we would be doubling it, and we could come back. I mean, we could come back and whenever we wanted to and say, this isn't working, you know, we still have an issue, and we could come back. I think that that's a reasonable way to go.
I think that's a good idea too. The only thing that I would go further on is that when everybody buys a home, again, you're supposed to call and check the water bill to make sure you don't have any outstanding, because you get a lien on your house. And the title company is supposed to withhold it from the seller then, so the buyer is not punished. And I somehow I still think we're missing that, where something could fall through the cracks, so to speak, and the seller can get away, because
John-
once they leave, they're gone.
The timing issue, and Vanita alluded to this, but I just want to make sure everybody understands it. If you sell your house, the buyer of your house comes in today and says, okay, I want to sign up for the service, and let's say that the transfer date is September 1st, so they come in, okay, they want to do that. Even if you're completely paid up to date, the last bill that we've actually sent you is what we refer to as August. We refer to bills by the month that they're due. So we refer to that bill as the August due bill. It's for June service. So even if you're completely paid up to date, you still owe us for 2 months. We haven't billed you yet, so you don't know that. So when you're asking about telling somebody what's owed, we don't even know because we haven't taken the reading and we haven't sent the bill. So if we say, yeah, this account is current, well, that still means that there's 2 months out there. And even if if you've missed August, you're only a week late. I mean, the August bills were due August 20th. So if you haven't paid August due, you're only a week late, which is not that unusual, but now you owe us for 3 months of service. You understand what I mean? The difficulty we're having is when you say, okay, you want to tell people when they sign up for service what the outstanding bill is. Well, in that example where you paid your August bill, the outstanding bill is 0.
No,
But that doesn't mean that it's going to stay 0.
But I think they would
because-
tell them there's still 2 months of water owing that hasn't been paid yet.
And that's fine. I just want you to understand that I understood the way you phrased this as we were going to be able to put a dollars and cents answer to this and say, okay, the seller owes X amount of dollars and cents. We're not going to
Right.
have that number because we don't have it until the final read. And just, it's another thing, but just so you know, because we had issues with this before, we require on a final read an inside read. There's inside meters and outside meters. We get inside and read the meter because we've had problems before with meters not matching up. And we need to know when that not matching happened so that, again, if you're selling the house, we want to make sure you're billed for that use over what our meter showed versus the new person. So we have to get inside. So we have to schedule that. The service department has to go out and do it. It has to come, it takes time to generate these bills. So it's not possible for us to just say, here's the bill, the final bill. It takes time to do that. Just
I
so-
understand that, but what if you have somebody like Mr. Coyne, that I'm sure, after he sold his house, 2 months later, he's gonna contact the city and say, I know my bill from June to August, I haven't paid yet, what is that bill? So he pays that bill, and now we're collecting a $200 deposit from the new person, and he pays his bill, and say he had to pay when he bought the property 10 years ago, he had to pay the $200, but he's made every single payment on time, and he's called you and said, 2 months
Right.
after he sold the property, I want to know how much you owe, and he pays that. Do you give him his $200 back?
Right, we would, when we do a final bill, we take the deposit. We liquidate the deposit as part of doing that final bill. So when we calculated his final bill, and if it's $150, we wouldn't send him a bill at all, we'd send him a check for the other $50. Okay, and so whenever we do a final, we're gonna close out the deposit. So if his bill ends up being $250, we're gonna close out the $200 deposit in this example, send him a bill for $50. If his bill ends up being $150, we're gonna close out the deposit, send him a check for $50 and be done with it.
Okay, but so you know where he's at, so you can send him that check for $50.
Well, we're gonna mail it to the last known address that we have.
Which would have been the house he just sold.
Which might well be the house that he just sold, right? I mean, if it comes back, it comes back. But I mean, usually somebody who moves has forwarding, so, I mean, it depends. But usually those go through. If they don't, I mean, it's gonna end up in unclaimed funds, and then however many years later, it'll be ours. But, I mean, we're gonna do the best we can to get a hold of them, but, you know.
Well, I guess, John, I was thinking in your scenario, though, if we told them, hey, there's still 2 months, could end up being owed by you, at that point, as I'm buying your house, I'm calling my title company and saying, I want this taken care of, because there's still 2 months, so you got to withhold. It does put
And
a
they
little-
usually withhold money. They
Yeah.
usually withhold $250.
But it
That's
does
what-
ensure then the buyer of that house, if I'm told the day I come to sign up for water, you better let the title company know that you're on the hook for this.
That's what my whole point is, that way, the city's not the one making the payment. The buyer has an incentive now, because the buyer says, I better talk to the seller. I want to make sure the money's there, or they better give me more money. It's not us doing it, because I don't think that's our job as a city. Our job as a city is to provide the service, not figuring out, well, the seller should have paid, the buyer, that's not, we don't want to get into those contractual arrangements between the buyer and the
But
seller.
unless you're paying cash for a property, there is a title agency that's involved with, you've set money aside, so.
Only if a broker, usually for sale by owners, they don't withhold money like that for
But
water.
the majority, I would think the majority of people have a broker.
Broker, right.
So I think the ball's being dropped.
No,
not
there's gonna
only
be
on-
some, I guess we can't solve all the problems, but we can solve a majority of the problems, and I guess that's the goal. is to solve a majority of
Do
them.
us any good to ask them
Yes,
for the
Lydia?
titles?
Another note, just for you all to know, is that after brainstorming and talking, our department was able to find a way within our database to be able to send service disconnection notices to those people who qualified for disconnection coming up in another week. So there are landlords who have been receiving those copies of those disconnection notices, and we've had a couple of calls generated from that. So again, there were some circumstances that we now have capable for us to do. So we are trying to work within our department to notify people, to let them, have the heads up that this is still their responsibility.
Correct, and I think, again, going to Wadsworth, they send me a notice of when the tenant's late. Every month, I get a notice that they're late, and they tell me how much they owe, and then I can keep track, and I can call them up and say, well, you're not gonna get your money back. Okay?
Didn't
So
two people receive the bill?
they get the bill, they don't pay it. So as a landlord, I get a notice to say, hey, you're the tenant, you're not paying your bill. But we don't have the capability here currently to do that in the city, so we never notify a landlord when a tenant's not paying their bill.
But we are now when it comes to disconnection.
For disconnection only, right?
Correct.
I'm just talking for a late payment, they usually get but that's expensive.
Well, that's 2 months late.
Because you gotta do you gotta mail.
Yeah.
You gotta give a mailer and all that. So is everybody okay with the change of increasing? Is 200 enough? Anybody wanna go higher?
No.
No.
And do you want it, make it universal that every person that comes in, regardless whether they're owner or renter, wishes to start service, they have to pay the $200?
Everybody okay? I mean, that sounds fair to me. I mean, you're renting an apartment or a house, you still have occupancy of something, right? So.
You pay your bill and you get your.
But again, now we're gonna get in the argument of affordable housing. How, we just talked about,
Oh, my
trying to have
goodness.
affordable housing. Who's gonna be able to come up with $200 to, so we gotta think about that too. I mean, that's another question.
Do you want to make it lower?
A big
No, I
part-
don't wanna make it lower. I'm just saying,
He wants to make it $300.
You gotta-
If someone
you-
told me my deposit tripled, I'd die.
you have to think about these other issues that we're
Well, I know
creating.
a lot of times people will call us and say, you took a deposit 14 years ago on my account, and I have been a faithful payer. Can you give me that money back? No, we cannot.
Can you credit it towards their current bill?
No, we just
No?
tell them that when that account ends, now it could
Gotcha.
be in my name, and I sell the property, and Jenny buys my house, then I get my deposit either utilized against my final bill or in full if I've paid everything.
Makes sense.
So
Thank
I
you
have,
for your hard work.
I have a question. The largest part of this whole issue concerning these bills comes about as a result of the fact that the finance director did not certify these to the auditor for the last 10 years. From my point of view, if the finance director does that, it takes care of 95% of what we're talking about.
True.
We didn't know anything about what was going on until I happened to ask Jenny a question and come to find out we haven't been certifying this. So what are we gonna do going down the road to make sure that these get certified every year? Because again, that solves the lion's share of this whole issue.
Keith, are you going to certify them every year?
Well, the law director informed me that we have to do this every year.
Yeah, because it's an obligation under the law.
That we were doing it all along when Keith came on, and it fell through the cracks. So what are we gonna do?
Well, we got certifications, not only water, remember, we have high grass, we have other things that are, high grass is probably the other big one, that, has to, if, they don't pay it, then that goes on their tax duplicate also, so, Bill?
I think when we talk, it's a good point, but we talked about this at length last time. And I still think that we need to assume a little bit of this responsibility, and maybe, it's the law, finance director needs to do it. We never even knew about it, I guess. I mean, we knew it's an ordinance, and who passes ordinances? We do. And I think we just need to be aware of it so that annually, I guess we need to check and make sure that they've been certified.
So can we include this in a part of the budget process? So that when you
Great
guys
idea.
are making a pass-through, this is one of the issues that you check up on? Because I'm not gonna be here in not that far distant period of time. Keith's not gonna be here, and this needs to not happen again.
Paul?
I did ask the auditors at the audit review, this question, and they said that we can request that to be a part of the audit.
Okay.
Annual audit with them, that we can say, look at the chapter 917 and audit against that. And so we can make that a part of our process as well.
But I think Greg's right, to get in front of it, you do during the budget process.
Yeah,
Because
agreed.
the auditors, by the
Agreed.
time we sit there at that meeting, Paul, with the auditors, we're, you know.
We're way
6 months,
past.
8 months
Yeah.
into the year. But we're, true.
Okay, to keep it moving forward, then,
Wait,
the
Kathy.
Kathy.
We have to certify by September 11th, and our budget process doesn't end until October. So there's only one time a year that we certify to the auditors.
No, but I think they're mentioning just at the beginning of the budget process, as part of it, we notify, it's written somewhere, to say, hey, remind to see if we're gonna certify, because it's not only water, right, it's the high grass. We have an ordinance already. So, I don't know how we pass a law on a law to make the law more enforceable. Oh, you're talking about this.
What we're supposed to be talking about.
I got you. Yeah, you're correct. So I guess on this modification of chapter 917, the one request is for the deposit to go up by $200.
Up to $200.
No, to $200.
Up to $200.
You're gonna get it to 300 some way, aren't
I'm
you?
trying to get
Try
that.
to sneak that by us.
And I think that's what we have currently. And what other modification, oh, they're talking. Besides the deposit is requested?
I was just going to suggest that Mr. Huber and our department had sat down and went over the 917 code. So we have some revisions to bring forward to council for universal consideration, I guess, so that could all be passed at one time. And it
Yeah,
would
so I guess
include
we-
the certification.
Yeah, we don't have the red line of the changes to the code in our packet, so I guess the next finance meeting, we'll address it at that point. Is everybody
Okay.
with that? Okay, okay.
I do have one more quick question, and that goes, I started getting water service in 1987. I really don't remember paying a deposit. So, all right, so what happens to an old timer like us who've been here
Well,
forever?
if you did pay a deposit for some reason, generally homeowners, excuse me, generally homeowners would not unless you went into disconnection. So
Okay,
if you
all right.
had gone 2 months without paying your bill, 2 penalties, were disconnected, first time, you would be responsible for the $100 and the $50 reconnection fee, or whatever it was back in those years. But certainly now, if we do the increase of the $200, that would be part of that. But if you had $100 on your account now, and you were selling your home, we would use it against your final bill, and then.
What, I
you
thought,
would-
since you mentioned also, what if you paid zero? What if there was no deposit back in
Oh,
the days?
then, yeah, it's a done deal.
Okay,
Yeah.
so my last water bill I can skip and not worry about it. I'm kidding, I wouldn't do that.
They couldn't find you. Okay, so we'll talk about that next finance meeting. Thanks for the information, and if you could get us the red line version of the changes to the code, you know, before that, it would, you know, be easier.
Certainly.
For us to.
And I just want to thank our department for working diligently with Mr. Huber. It has been very gratifying.
Okay, I don't know if I'd say that, but condolences.
No. You guys do a great job. I really, truly appreciate you, and
Yeah.
it sounds like you put a lot of work and effort and thought into this, so I appreciate that.
Okay, now we're gonna move on to 23-157, purchase a truck-mounted vacuum excavator for the water and streets. Mr. Pacoli?
Thank you, Mr. President. So this
Wait,
is.
hold on one second. Are
Sorry.
we not going to do the 200?
No, we're gonna wait till they modify the whole ordinance adopted all at once.
Do it all at once.
Why?
Because there's a lot of changes to it, so.
Okay, but between now and then, it would be much better to do the 200 now and then do the changes to the code, because everybody else that signs up is still going to pay the 100.
Well,
and then
Mayor,
we're not
we-
going to have enough to cover that.
We've got to change the code. We might as well change it at one time.
Yeah, well, I'd like to change the code with everything else that they're recommending, Greg, but the fact that we don't have it here, and every time somebody signs up, which is generally every day, every other day, we're losing another $100 if we're all.
But I guess it won't occur until 45 days from now, so what we could do is the next finance meeting, once we have the changes and agree, we could pass it with the emergency clause to make it effective through finance. I don't know if we really want to do that, because then maybe somebody will want to challenge our changing of the water code. I'm trying to think of your question. It's still going to be before November, we can't increase the deposits probably before October or November currently, as it stands right now. Because we can't pass it through council, and you gotta wait 30 days after the passage of it without an emergency clause to become effective. So we couldn't start raising the deposits until that occurs.
Yeah, I just don't know how long these revisions are gonna take, and in my mind, if we're intent on raising it from 100 to 200, why are we waiting on that?
Well, I thought he said, Mr. Huber, we'll have it in the next finance meeting in 2 weeks. Is that?
Yeah, I don't have an ordinance for this right now,
No, I know that, right.
so we've got it.
What?
We've got to wait 2 weeks on that for sure.
Okay.
But, and I have a comment. Again, I knew of these things when I bought my properties in the city of Medina. And I know it's confusing to people that come in. So I guess what I'm asking is to make sure when people come in to your department, I know you're doing a great job and you're trying to communicate this, but clearly there's a lack of understanding of what some people are responsible for. Is there something that you have in writing that you can hand to them that explains it to them so it's more clear for them, so we don't have to continue to keep having these conversations?
The fact that they're responsible, it's a
No,
card
an
that they sign.
explanation of how if John sells a property today, he still has 2 months of water bills that you haven't billed him for that are going to come due when you know what the amount is. So you have something in writing that clarifies what this process is for somebody who comes in and says, okay, I just bought a property here in town, and this is the expectation of how the water bill and the deposits work.
The owner cards are held in service, but I think we should probably revise that and show it to Greg. And then, I mean, but I don't think we need any council action to revise the card, right?
No.
You can do that online too, right?
Right, and we'd have to change it there.
That it's more clear to the new homeowner so they know what their responsibility is.
Plus, if it's certified every year.
Yes, yeah.
We'll be able to stay on top
Okay.
of it.
Okay, Mr. Pacoli, you're back on.
Yay!
Thank you again, Mr. President. This request is for a truck-mounted vacuum excavator, also known as a hydrovac. Hydrovac is a highly technological vacuum pump that uses pressurized water, and it basically liquefies the soil where the excavation is going to occur, and then also vacuuming it out at the same time into a hopper. We used a trailer, we rented one, if you recall us talking about the lead pipe services that we had an obligation with the EPA to investigate. We rented a hydrovac trailer. It worked well. It broke down a few times because it was a used trailer. But it is a safer way of excavation. If we talk about the right-of-ways, they're very crowded. We have 3 new fiber companies that just recently came in and installed fiber everywhere all over the city. You have the gas, you have electric, you have all the other utilities, storm, sanitary. It's just a trend going forward. It just makes the excavations easier, cleaner, safer. Traditionally, you use a backhoe. Now, there will be times we still use a backhoe or the mini excavator. But using a hydrovac is the way that we are trending to. And I'd like to have this request as listed. It's split between the street department and the water department because both departments will use the hydrovac. Also, it's helpful to use around tree roots because we don't have to cut through them. The way the hydrovac works is like high pressure water, and it'll make the hole as big as and as round diameter and deep as we would need it for spotting. You don't have to have a laborer enter the hole of the excavation until it's actually complete. So there's a lot of advantages to using the unit. And that's why we have this request forward.
Thank you. Any discussion on the request?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 23-158, purchase of a 2023 full ODOT bucket truck from the street department. Nino, again?
Thank you, Mr. President. So this other request for the street department, our current bucket truck that we have is a 1998 3500. Its capability is 35 feet with respect to reach. We've had that since 1998. It's served the city well for 25 years. We still will keep it as a spare, but we need to move forward with the replacement. And this ODOT truck that we're looking at is a full bucket mount with a stall body, has a capability of 45-foot reach, which is safer because the other unit, which is 35, we'd extend to its full capacity. Again, it's something that we had in the budget and we'd like to move forward with.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 23-159, increase expenditure of PO 23816 Goodyear Tire for the sanitation department.
Thank you, Mr. President. Talking with John Ledecker and Jared Joyce running the sanitation department, we'd like to increase this PO to get through the end of the year. The cost of the tires on the sanitation trucks have grown significantly with respect to cost. They've burned through more tires in the beginning of the summer. With it being hotter and not as much rain as we had, believe it or not, the way they explained it to me, the tires were burning off quicker and they were changing them more often, so we needed to increase this expenditure to get through the end of the year.
Questions?
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 29-159, increase expenditure of PO 2023-816 Goodyear Tire for sanitation. Wait, I just did that one.
No, you just did that.
23-160, purchase of electric vehicle charging stations for City Hall parking deck. Mr. Patton?
Thank you, Mr. President. As you may know, I'm sure you know, we have received a grant that we applied for through the Ohio EPA to provide $30,000 towards electric vehicle charging stations for the parking deck. We worked through several issues and concerns the different departments had, the fire department, and have kind of circled back to our original plan to install them just outside the storage and electrical rooms on the first floor of the parking deck. We can purchase these through the Sourcewell program, so we don't have to bid it. Total cost is $38,400, and the grant will pay for $30,000 of that.
Thank you. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Rose?
Once upon a time, we had I don't know if a promise or a request or something from Serpentini Chevrolet to provide us with some
That's a
charging stations. Is this part of that?
No, that's a different program. This is through the EPA. That was completed through GM, and their program to provide the charging stations. It would be up to us to install them.
So that's not going to, when do we plan on doing that?
Well, first we need to find a location that's suitable. The big thing with these stations is having a spot that's got sufficient power. It's likely that we're going to have to upgrade the power wherever we want to install these. So it's a process to work through.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions?
Mr. Coyne.
Mayor?
So we're talking about tonight's project out here. The second location we were thinking about is the county parking deck because it's used both day in and day out for the library, for the county, as well as for all the community events. So then we'd have them on both sides of town, but Mr. Patton's exactly right. We'd have to upgrade the electric because when we built that parking deck, this was not foreseen. So
Okay.
that's going to take an investment of that as well.
Thank you.
Further questions?
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 23-161, SWMA agreement with Ravago Real Estate. Let's do this one.
Thank you. Council knows we've approved several of these. What they are, the EPA requires us, anytime a person does a large project where they have stormwater management, they are required to enter into an agreement with the city. Basically, it puts them on the hook to maintain these and do some inspections on these annually. This agreement will ultimately get recorded with the county and become part of the project going forward.
Any questions?
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 23-162, waiving fees for sidewalk program. Mr. Patton.
Thank you, Mr. President. Earlier this spring, I think it was, we sent the bills for our last sidewalk program. We did receive some complaints, some inquiries. Basically, they can be summarized 3 different categories. People lived on Prospect Street. They were getting billed for sidewalk repair. Well, with our Prospect Street project, we tore out all that sidewalk, and we since replaced it. Same thing on West Smith. there's a number of folks, they're questioning why they would have to pay for a sidewalk repair when we came in with our West Smith project and tore that repair out. We are going to be replacing those. And the third was home ownership changes, where we sent the bill to the current owner. They weren't the owner when the project was done. They didn't feel they should be responsible for that cost. So we're bringing them here tonight to see what you want to do with them.
Any questions on that, Bill? I like the first two, but.
You don't like the third one?
Well, no, because when you buy a property, you're supposed to ask those questions.
Oh, my
Sometimes,
gosh.
I think sometimes people maybe just don't know the questions that they're
must be
supposed to
so
ask, and I
nice to
think you
know
have to
everything
recognize
about
everybody is human, right?
I know, I get it.
And I think the sidewalk program's I like the way we set it up. It's been a great program for the city to help make it walkable, safe, for everybody. And I think it makes, this is just common sense, I think, if I can use that term, that we're gonna waive these fees.
Any other comments?
Now, I wanted to weigh in on this a little bit. To me, the first two make sense in that we tore those out, but what you do here is gonna set a precedent. And it doesn't make sense to me that because I bought a property, my property, actually, we're kind of a hybrid. We do this to the benefit of the person who owns this property. Most municipalities require the homeowners themselves to be entirely responsible for their sidewalks. It's their sidewalk in front of their property. Even if you bought the property and the repair was done previously, you still benefit from this new sidewalk because previously, prior to the city doing this work, the sidewalk was in bad state of repair. So when I talked to Patrick about this, I thought you should look at this, and certainly you can do what you want, but be aware this does actually benefit the property owner who actually is responsible in the state of Ohio for their sidewalks. And even if you bought the property and didn't know about this, this still is a benefit to your specific property. And that is a much different situation than these first two issues where we did the repair and then came in because of a street project and tore it out.
Patrick, how much of this sidewalk are we talking about? The third option?
Dollar-wise, you mean, or?
Yeah, I mean, how much, is it the entire sidewalk?
Oh, no,
Yeah,
the repairs are
3,500.
generally spot repairs.
Yeah, so
Sometimes-
how much are we talking about there?
Well, if I remember right, the cost to remove and replace was somewhere around $950 a square foot. I can get you that specific information. I don't have it here today.
Are you talking about the aggregate, Bill?
Yeah.
So the 7 ownership changes,
ownership
that's the
changes.
group you're looking at,
Yeah.
is $3,568.10.
Actually, Mayor,
Yeah, that's an
we
updated
updated
list.
that. I handed out an updated list.
Okay.
Since I submitted the RCA, Tracy and Renita, Tracy from our offices notified me that I'd missed a couple, so the revised list is,
Okay, 89.53, 63 and 62 cents. 89, 63, 62.
So what would everybody like to do?
I already said, I think we can accommodate this.
Okay,
I
Paul, do
agree.
you want to waive them all?
I'm okay with the top two because of the construction and things like that.
The top two.
Leaning towards the top two.
I guess I'm going with the top two, because that's the only way it's gonna go. And you're
I realize that my influence here has diminished to such an absolute degree, right?
nobody pays attention to me either.
All right, I'll make a motion then that we do waive the Prospect Street and Smith Road sidewalks that we tore out as part of the reconstruction project of those two roads.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 23-162, letter of intent for FOC Mausoleum Repair Project. Jansen?
Thank you, Mr. President. Earlier this year, Resolution 3723 allowed the Friends of the Cemetery to hire Prospectus Architecture to do some field work and come up with design plans for renovating the interior of our mausoleum at Spring Grove. Upon doing that, we discovered that the roof was leaking after we removed the false ceiling that was in the mausoleum. So the last about a month and a half, the Friends of the Cemetery, Chet, Karen, and Paul are here, They've done some work looking at options for repair or replacement of the roof of the mausoleum. If you recall, there is some history. There was a copper roof put on about 20 years ago, and that copper roof is starting to fail. So before we can proceed with the interior renovation, we need to get the roof addressed. So the Friends, like I mentioned, have done some work to look at alternative roofing methods on certain portions of the roof, and are looking to, I believe, hire an architectural firm here in the very near future to come up with specifications, roofing specifications, so that they can bid and replace the roof on the mausoleum. They have provided a letter of intent where they intend on repairing the roof and the interior of the mausoleum at no cost to the city, and donate it to us as a gift when it's completed. The rough budget for that project at this time is approximately $100,000.
And you mentioned you're going to follow the same procedure as we did the construction of the buildings as far as, you know, our involvement, just to make sure that we don't have any liens filed against the city and.
Yes, so I did pose a question to Mr. Huber about whether or not we should explore a project agreement for this project. I'm not sure if he's had an opportunity to look at it yet, but it was the thought that we would follow a similar type building project agreement that we had on the Amos Mears building, so we make sure we cover all those things you just mentioned.
Anybody have any problems with that?
I do. What if I pass it subject to final law director approval then?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. 23-164, amend 94306 and 94311 cemetery.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. This request is here. We've talked about this with the Cemetery Commission the last couple months. We have above-ground private mausoleums that are installed at Spring Grove. They were put in started maybe 15 years ago, 18 years ago. We currently are out of room for those, and upon looking at it, we didn't actually have any legislation specific to private mausoleums. So we were contacted by an individual who's looking to install a private mausoleum. The Friends, or the Cemetery Commission, agreed that we should continue to offer those. So we identified a section, Section 13. We came up with pricing and some size restrictions. So the request here is to change the ordinances that pertain to that as it relates to private mausoleums. Some of the, just a few things to note here are on 94306 is the size limitations, that all of the ones that we currently have installed fit within those parameters. And then 94311, anything that's related to private mausoleum there, the lot costs are substantially higher, as well as the change to the crypt ceiling to reflect the amount of time and labor involved with sealing those private mausoleums up.
Any questions or comments on those modifications?
I just want to thank Jansen and the staff for all the hard work they did on this.
I just want to add too, at our last public properties meeting, the Friends of the Cemetery hosted it, and we did a walk of the cemetery. We got to see the mausoleum, the issue there. We got to see these private mausoleums. So it really helped, I think, for all of us to see what we were talking about. So thank you for hosting us for that, educating us. Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 23-165, bid Spring Grove Cemetery columbarium wall. Mr. Willie?
All right, this is the last cemetery thing for this meeting. We have two columbarium walls at our reflecting pond in the Pat Mears Garden at the cemetery. We just most recently built one in 2019. That had 120 niche in it, as well as this one here before you. Only 24 of those remain. We have seen a lot of people pre-planning and purchasing those. We have two that remain in our first wall. Those were just recently sold back to the city. So we're requesting to kind of build this one a little bit sooner and get it completed. So once the second wall is filled up, we can move on to selling the third. For benefit of the public, the first one was funded by the Friends of the Cemetery. We then collected fees that were used to purchase or to build the second one. So what we're going to need to do before we decide to sell in Columbarium 3 is adjust those fees so that we can make sure we plan for the fourth one.
Questions?
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, 23-166, 2023 city auction. Mr. Pacoli?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is our annual city auction. We will have a final list of items for the council to review prior to the next meeting, and Law Director will have a chance to look at the agreement that we have every year with the auctioneer. We're looking tentatively at end of October, October 28th of this year for the auction at the city garage, just to schedule. Thanks.
Thank you.
Move to approve, subject to law director's approval of the auctioneer contract?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, the finance meeting is adjourned. We have to go right into council, I guess, since it's 7:30. All right, you got 2 minutes.
I didn't say aye.
There's not enough toilets.
Yeah, you young guys.